If you've been on medication for anxiety or depression, and you've been on it for a long time, and that could be years, and you've been stable for all that time, a lot of people think about discontinuing or lowering the dose, believing that maybe they no longer require that medication. If you want to experiment with yourself, that's certainly your prerogative. But I always suggest to folks to do it medically supervised. These kinds of medications, if you discontinue too rapidly, it's almost like your brain says, "Hey, where'd that medication go?" And there's a bit of a rebound effect where you can literally kind of crash and wind up feeling absolutely miserable. The symptoms of either depression, anxiety can return with a vengeance. So that's why you always want to do this medically supervised. And in doing it medically supervised, you don't know really if you can do without medication or less medication until you find out at what point might those symptoms return. And so, it's the kind of experiment where you're only going to know if it works by if something bad happens, the return of those symptoms. So I do want to caution folks about taking matters into their own hands to experiment with their medications. Do it medically supervised. Recognize you may get to a point where you reach that threshold where your brain says, "No, I need this medication. The symptoms have returned." Don't look at that as a failure. Don't look at that as a bad thing. You're just learning where your chemistry, where your biology is at today. So if you want to experiment, go ahead, but medically supervised. We always want you to be well and be safe and be monitored, lest you go into a mood state that isn't good for you. So hopefully that information is of value, and you consider this and manage yourself safely. I'm Gary Derenfeld. I'm a social worker. Hopefully that's of value to those of you who are thinking of experimenting with your medication.